here is the simple analogy to explain what went wrong in the economy and the financial markets. The problem was, as Paul Krugman said on our show a couple of days ago, too much leverage. And in fact, I found out exactly the law that changed the leverage situation. It was in 2004. It was actually a regulation by the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, and they said your debt to equity ratio can go from 12 to 1 to 30 to 1. Now, a rough explanation of what that means, that sounds confusing, is if you have $1, you can borrow up to $12 to bet with, right, in the past. What they changed it to in 2004 is if you have $1, you could borrow up to $30 to bet with. Now, if you lose some of that money and you only have $1 to back it up, you're going to be in for a world of trouble, which is the situation we find ourselves in. Now, there was a lot of other laws that went into creating the dire situation that we have now. But here's a simple analogy to explain it to you. Now, imagine you're playing blackjack, and somebody says to you, all right, you got $100 here, and maybe I can let you borrow up to $1,000 based on the $100 that you have, but it's your money. So now you gamble it any way you like. Now understand, you have a chance of winning, you have a chance of losing. Now, how do you play? Now, you might play fairly conservatively because it's your money and it's $100, and if you lose, you only have $100, especially if you wind up betting up to $1,000, you better be damn sure that your bets are sound. Otherwise, you have lost money you don't even have. So you're going to be pretty conservative in how you play. Now, you might lose some of that money. You might lose all of that money, depending on how much you like to gamble. But that's the money you have, and that's the money you can lose. So that's how the system is normally supposed to work. Now, instead, what they did was they created these things called derivatives. Then they allowed the companies to leverage them up, as I just explained because of the 2004 rule, so that they could borrow more money on those companies. But the problem was, it wasn't their money. That's the key part. So now how would you act if somebody said to you, now, the $100 I'm giving you is no longer your money, but every time you bet it, I'm going to give you $5. Now, it's somebody else's money. They could win, they could lose, but every time you bet, whether win or lose, you get $5. Now, I'm going to give you an additional advantage. You can go up to $1,000 even though they don't have $1,000. They only have $100. But I'm going to give you an additional advantage. You can bet 30 times that amount even though they don't have it at all. And every time you make a bet, you get paid. And the bigger the bet, the more you get paid. Now, how do you think you'd play those blackjack hands? Well, any reasonable person who wants to make as much money as possible would bet all the money times 30, because every time they made a bet, whether they won or lost, they got paid. Well, that's what's happened with the markets. They took your money and they gambled it over and over and over again until they lost it all. The guys who worked on Wall Street, whether it was Morgan Stanley or Lehman Brothers or whatever, some of them might be out of a job now, but who cares? The top executives made millions upon millions losing your money because we created an incentive system for them to do exactly that. And then the politicians turned around and pretended to be shocked. You're telling me I gave you the incentive to gamble all that money, and you did? Of course they did! Of course they did, because it wasn't their money to gamble. So they took wilder and wilder risks, and they bet as much as humanly possible. So, if it isn't their fault, and I honestly think to a large degree it isn't. Now, some of them knew what they were doing. Some of them knew that they were going to lose your money. So if you want to blame them, by all means, go ahead. But if you set up the wrong incentives, people will act wrongly based on those wrong incentives.